Jim Orte is working towards success. He's an economist for the phone company, charting marketing trends. Trends to make his company more profitable. Now that's obvious enough. What isn't so obvious is Jim's drive to make his life more successful and profitable. Jim wrestles freestyle, and he's training for the '84 Olympics. He started training in 1978 for the Olympic Games held in Moscow back in 1980. He was disappointed in the U.S. boycott, like most of the athletes who didn't get to compete. But he agreed with the decision. Now the Olympics are scheduled for Los Angeles in 1984, and he knows he can go if he's the best.
Every day he's wrestling. My goal is to put his blades on that mat as quick as I can. And if I hurt him doing it, that's his fault. In 1984, the games are going to be in our own backyard in Los Angeles. We're using a lot of existing facilities, and possibly, if there's enough support, we can dominate the '84 games. We can actually make a profit of this. And with the support of the people, of our citizens, we can do that.
Citizen support is just one small part of what it takes to get past the Olympic tryouts into the actual games. Mental and physical preparation are at the top of Jim's list. So like all American amateur athletes, Jim has to live up to every old cliche about succeeding and develop the right attitude. Jim Orte has to say to himself, I'm gonna win. For NBC News, Steve Houck, Oklahoma City.
Early this morning, volunteers were busy preparing the myriad for the traditional dinner. Officials are expecting a record turnout this year. Over 7,000 people will be on hand for the free meal. That calls for a lot of food, and the organization has just that. 2,000 pounds of turkey was stripped this morning by Votech students who answered the call for volunteers. There's a lot of work to be done before the meal can be served, but according to one of the workers, it's worth it.
It's really gratifying. We have a lot of fun. You can see it's a lot of trouble, and we go to a lot of expense. We don't spare expense. We just pray we get the money in, that's all. We don't ever put out anything for people to get money in. We don't go door to door. That's a no-no. We've had a few this year for some reason did that, but it was not for extortion or any reason like that.
The job is more than just moving tables and preparing food. It's a time for fun and working together. The dinner is not only for the poor, but for anyone who feels they're all alone on the most special day of the year. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
This helicopter took off on a ride that was just a little bit different from most. One passenger had a special surprise planned for the other, a surprise that would last a lifetime. When Roger Bryant took Lori Wilson up to see the Christmas lights at Ski Island, he had an ulterior motive. The lights were beautiful from the sky, and one set of lights had a question, what might be called the eternal question. Will you marry me forever? Like all good Christmas stories, this one had a happy ending. Lori wiped the tears from her eyes, Roger gave her the ring, and they sealed the bargain. Lori said she never dreamed anything like this would ever happen to her. But she shouldn't be surprised. Just consider the time of year. Everyone knows there really is magic at Christmas time, and there really is magic for two people in love. Bill Ross, Action 4. Traffic on Oklahoma highways is expected to be heavy during the next few days. The Christmas-New Year's holiday is one of the busiest times of the year. That means Trooper Kent Ritchie and other highway patrolmen are going to be working long hours. One of Ritchie's biggest concerns is that bad weather could make driving more dangerous than usual. He said the most dangerous time is when it first starts to freeze over. You happen to skid, let off the accelerator and the brake, and turn in the opposite direction of the skid. When you have to stop, put gradual pressure on your brakes and slow yourself down at intervals. When accelerating, be sure to do it gradually so you can keep the tires from spinning.
Most important thing would be just to take your time, leave 15-20 minutes earlier to wherever your destination is, and just drive slowly. Try not to follow people too close and give you a longer following distance, allow for the wet pavement or any ice or snow that could be on the road.
Ritchie said if you're in an emergency, don't drive fast yourself. Call the police or highway patrol and let them help you.
Oklahoma City residents were given a great big Christmas present recently as the new Sylvan Goldman Blood Institution was officially opened, and citizens have returned the favor by showing up to donate blood. The holiday season is a peak period for emergency blood use in area hospitals, but most donors don't give blood during this time of the year. So a special program was set up to make sure an ample supply was available.
We have enough red cells and whole blood on hand, but platelets are our need. Platelets are what stop acute bleeding. And if we have somebody who's in a major accident and loses a lot of blood, one of the blood components that they need are platelets. And we can only keep them for a maximum of 5 days.
Giving blood in Oklahoma City has become much simpler thanks to the new facility. Instead of 3 locations, the Oklahoma Blood Institute is located under one roof, and that has raised the quality of service.
We were sitting on top of each other in the old building, and here we have about 50,000 square feet. We have temperature-controlled rooms for platelet storage. We have special walk-in freezers and refrigerators. We have an outpatient clinic area that will treat patients with blood-related diseases.
Pigtail, CMV negative.
We have planned it for efficient flow, not only of the donor but also of the blood product, so that we can offer the highest quality blood products and blood services to patients.
The facility is still under construction, but when it's completed, it will be one of the most advanced in the world. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience. It's going to be a couple hours before we could open. We were robbed this morning.
How about that?
That was what Quail Creek Bank customers heard this morning if they tried to do business with the Northside facility. Last night, 2 men went to the bank executive vice president's home and held the family hostage. Then this morning, drove back to the bank with the president and stole an undisclosed amount of cash. Authorities are searching for a man about 45 years old, 6 feet tall, weighing 190 pounds, and another man about 40, 6 feet 1, weighing 140. Officials say the men are probably disguised in wigs, and they were wearing suits. The robbers fled the scene in the bank vice president's car, which was recovered later. No injuries were reported. The 2 are armed with a pistol and a submachine gun. Police will continue to search the area until all leads are exhausted. Kevin Ogle, Action 4. The last few weeks, moviegoers have been treated to a host of new releases by the major filmmakers. The movies were directed by big-name directors and had big-time budgets.
Captain, your navigator, Mr. Unger, and your first officer, Mr. Dunn.
Unger? Over. Over. Done.
But even the big names had to start somewhere. This Civil War film is a product of Kevin Meyer. He's a 23-year-old from Edmond, Oklahoma, and he's a film student at the University of Southern California. He's one of the lucky ones. At the tender age of 23, Meyer will be directing his first major motion picture this summer. But he found out firsthand that things are rough for a young director in Hollywood.
It's really a rough place to break into, you know, and the old saying that it's who you know, I'm finding to be more and more true, actually. We went out and got our own equipment. We went out and got our own actors, some of which are well known, and we just went out and did it. And
hiring the actors and pirating the equipment was a lot of work and sacrifice. Meyer had to hawk most of his belongings to get the film completed, but he thinks it was worth it and could mean more money and success in the long run.
Kevin, will you succeed in this industry?
My answer to that question is yes. I mean, there's only one way to do it. You got to go out and fight like crazy to stay above all the garbage, and it's succeed or die.
And who knows? Before long, maybe even Dean O'Lally will be reviewing a Kevin Meyer production. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
If you'll take a good look at the state of Oklahoma and what they need, you'd have to balance that. If we're going to wait for one tragedy after another and a little drought that happens, you can't turn water on and off in a second. It has to be a long-range program, and it needs to be in place to where it can be developed long-ranged.
An active oil rig. It's a rare sight in Oklahoma these days. But consider this. It's a Plotner oil rig. Ralph Plotner Oil and Gas Company has drilled through the Oklahoma mud 100 times in the last 5 years and have succeeded in finding black gold or natural gas 99 of those 100 times. It's an impressive track record and has made Ralph Plotner a wealthy man.
I think any time you hit 99% out of 100 wells that you drill, you're going to get a lot of attention, whereas other people wouldn't get. I will admit this, in this day and time, if we were starting over, I don't know if we could do it. You know, we happened to get into it at the right time, and everything clicked for us, and of course we drilled some fantastic wells right off the bat. And but I think due to the track record and due to the success and due to the relationship that we have with our investors, that I think we're probably as set as anybody would be.
Plotner is not without problems of his own. As with a lot of energy groups, cash flow can be a problem. But while other companies were going under, Plotner had his best year in '82 and sees brighter days ahead for the industry. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
Once again, money and budgeting will be the item of long hours of debate at the Capitol this year. Only this year, money is the problem, not the answer. The last half-decade has seen unprecedented growth in state revenues, but all of that has changed. Already, the state has cut spending by $26 million, and there are nearly as many ideas on further budget cuts, where and how much, as there are lawmakers to make them. Governor Nye's suggestion is to borrow $65 million from the Pension Reserve Fund and cut spending by 3% across the board. Several major lawmakers have already said that won't do. The across-the-board cuts will probably hit opposition from public employees as well because of its proposed standstill in salaries. They say there are programs that can afford deeper cuts, and that would allow the state to give cost-of-living raises to the workers. The budget problems that already exist could be complicated in May, when federal Judge Luther Bohannon reviews the progress in the Oklahoma prison system. Prison overcrowding is still a severe problem here, and the Department of Corrections could come through the storm virtually untouched by the lash of budget cutting. In the meantime, lawmakers are looking for alternatives to incarceration of nonviolent offenders, an idea with a long history of support from administrators of the Corrections Department. Nye also wants to put nearly $100 million, set aside for programs that voters turned down, back into circulation. He has offered his own water program as a sacrificial lamb to indicate that it's time to forget pet projects. But some lawmakers say they won't give up, especially on water development. The last 4 years have been pretty easy years for keeping an office here at the Oklahoma State Capitol. No one believes the next 4 years will be quite as easy. In fact, the feeling here is that these troubled economic times will be the real test of Oklahoma's state leadership. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, at the State Capitol.
Person who is not here today, but who will be joining a little later. Opportunity at this point, we will, as soon as we can. We don't know whether we had a good Christmas season or not. And of course, if you can tell, always in the past, there's been a big surge of revenues as a result of the Christmas sales. We don't know whether it happened this year or not, and then we don't know what's going to happen after that. But as you can tell from looking at this chart, we're running almost $10 million per month under where we were projected to be.
It started, but this morning a few hundred motorists in Oklahoma City weren't so lucky. Cold weather puts extra stress on your engine, and if you haven't already, now's a good time to winterize your car.
I had a car that was hesitating a little bit in the stop signs and at the signal lights when you started to accelerate, and I wanted my car to be in perfect condition for the winter driving.
Getting a tune-up is one of the most important steps in winterizing your car. The mechanic should make a complete check of everything under the hood.
Well, the most important thing is the preventive maintenance aspect. You pay them now or you pay them later, and I think it's to the motorist advantage to take care of this tune-up before the bad weather strikes.
If you haven't already, here are a few tips that may help you keep your car running during the winter months. Get a tune-up, make sure your battery points and plugs are in good shape, have a clean air filter, plenty of coolant, and keep the gas tank about 3/4 full to prevent condensation. AAA officials say it will cost you about $50 to have your car completely winterized, but it may be cheaper than having to call a tow truck. Debbie Mash, Action 4.
what I am using in the opinion is perhaps what I would call a pragmatic or reasonable interpretation, an analogy of that being the state statute, which dictates that when measuring a liquor store, the distance from a liquor store to a school or a church, it also states a 300-foot distance, but then says you measure it from the public entrance of that liquor store down to the street across the right-of-way and then back up to the particular property in question. Be at the Planning Commission meeting. So I think what they will have...
And you're not from this area then?
No,
right?
from northwest Oklahoma City.
Oh, is that right? Great. Okay. All right. Is there anybody business-wise that you've been dealing with specifically on this, Mr. Atkinson? Or?
No, not him. Joe Davis is the individual.
Today I've announced that the official allocation will be 11.9% less than had been appropriated by the legislature. It's another bad news day for us because the agencies will have to continue their efforts to tighten the belt. Of course, under the Constitution, we're doing it the exact way that we're required to do so that Oklahoma continues to have a balanced budget. We cannot have deficit spending.
Flying has always been surrounded by an aura of romanticism. But these pilots have more on their mind than the exhilaration of flight. They're police chopper pilots, and they have a job to do. The chopper is fired up, and the two men go through other routine checks of the craft before they can fly into the morning sky.
I think it is glamorous, but it's just a job like anything else, and it takes dedicated people to do that job in a safe and expertise manner. There's satisfaction doing police work. I like to apprehend criminals. And there's a satisfaction in flying because I'm apprehending criminals.
A large part of the work done by chopper pilots like J.J. Young is monitoring Oklahoma streets and highways. They've been doing it for 11 accident-free years and have proved invaluable to the force. It's become a daily routine now, out in the morning and then back to the landing pad to await further instruction.
I think it's a very effective tool, yes. It's an aerial observation post. We can see what's going on the ground. I'd like to say that it's not that dangerous, but it is.
They have to fly low at night, and they've been shot at a time or two. But for these pilot policemen, it's all in a day's work. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
Ciao. 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 Ciao, everybody. What do you do tonight? What is your program? Ciao. Ciao, I'm very happy that they sold the house, and I am ready to come back as soon as it's possible to do the same thing. More than that, I cannot tell you. And anyway, I don't think then opera is going to beat your music. Don't worry for that.
It's a warrior dance, and only the most elite many years ago belonged to the Gord clan. As you became older and more sure in battle, you belonged to the most elite, and that was the Gord clan, and this is an extension of those brave times when they sang the Gord dance and danced the Gord dance, really. And each Gord dancer is not dancing to please the public. They're dancing the way they feel.
Due to our horsemen being involved in all the communities, we did borrow a substantial sum of money to do this, and it takes that to pass a statewide campaign. I would say in 6 months it'll all be taken care of, and at that point there's no threat of any foreclosure at all. We're not in no pinch.
The Phillips collection hung on the walls of the Oklahoma Arts Center 3 months, and during that time, nearly 50,000 people viewed the Impressionism. Now the important job of gently removing these priceless paintings from their temporary home has begun, like this painting by George O'Keeffe called Taos Church. Arts Center workers wear special gloves, and they treat the fragile paintings as if they were made of crystal.
The curator, of course, from the Phillips collection will come here and oversee all of this. They look at the painting very closely and examine it against the last condition report, which was done at the time when the paintings arrived, and just to make sure that there weren't any changes in the surface of the paintings.
So, for a while, the paintings will be resting inside crated boxes, free from the eyes of the admiring public, and all the elements the Phillips collection has been exposed to. Bellishaw, Action 4 at the Oklahoma Arts Center.
The After the Gold Rush Club is the latest Oklahoma City night spot to defend itself at a public hearing. Residents in the area say club patrons are constantly fighting or drag racing in front of the building. Homeowners in the neighborhood feel they are taking a chance on being attacked just by walking near the club at night. But club representatives say other businesses in the area are partially responsible for attracting young crowds in the evening, and that it is hard to pinpoint just which establishment troublemakers come from. The attorney for After the Gold Rush told city council members today there is not enough proof to declare his client's business a public nuisance.
I have asked the people that operate our business if they know anything about the aggravated assaults and fights and indecent exposures and all that kind of stuff, and we don't really know anything about it. Now, that's not to say that somewhere in the vicinity that did not happen, but again, without some more definitive evidence, it's hard to attribute that, in my mind, to this particular business.
Here we've got 2 police officers that have been seriously injured from patrons that admitted they were patrons of the Gold Rush Club.
Yes.
After the gold. We have a manslaughter charge presently pending, and the suspect said he had been drinking heavily prior to the accident. And you have testified here that the club did not serve beer to people that were drunk. And I would like to have somebody that can testify to some of these things of their own knowledge.
In other council action, city leaders voted not to have a public hearing on 5 Oklahoma City gay clubs. The clubs were named in a petition by residents near Northwest 39th and Penn as being a public nuisance. But the neighborhood has agreed to give the bar 6 months to clean up the area and show good faith. If residents are not satisfied then, the matter goes back to city council. Ed Stewart, Action 4.